Nightside Radio Studios.
Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
This is the J.J. McCartney Show.
Rudy Giuliani. Mr. Mayor, do you want to apologize for your comment?
You are not a school marm. Who are you to say, Mr. Giuliani, I think you should apologize to the president? You want to apologize on my show?
All that I can see of this president, he apologizes for America. He criticizes America.
To condemn his patriotism, to question his love of America?
He said, we're an exceptional country, but so is Greece.
Doesn't mean he doesn't love America.
I think it's self-evident that Barack Obama loathes America.
A lot of liberals don't believe in American exceptionalism, but that doesn't mean they don't love America. You suggest he was raised by people who don't love America or who didn't help him learn to love America.
His grandfather introduced him to Frank Marshall Davis, who was a communist.
He fought in World War II.
He fought in World War II. You can't say that he fought in World War II. Oh, Rudy Giuliani, you bastard.
Did you know that 65% of the people murdered in the last
fight against Islamists? Namely, information is lacking on civilian troops are now being accused of war. Growing concern over how French and local forces are handling the fight against Islamists. Namely, information is lacking on civilian casualties, and Malian troops are now being accused of war crimes. We managed to get exclusive footage of their alleged atrocities and spoke to local journalist Gonzalo Wancha about its origins.
As we continue moving north, we find reports of extrajudicial killings and evidence of war crimes. We have heard of the murder of a few citizens by Malian soldiers in the town of Savar. Not only did they kill them, they shoved their bodies into the drinking water well, located in the centre of the town, making the rest of the population watch. We're also hearing of cases where people are being prosecuted for trying to earn a living under the ruling militants. 16-year-old Adama says he was unknowingly employed as a cook and butler by jihadists and is now being accused of terrorism.
After I stopped working as a cook in the town of Douenza, I went to Sever. There I met an old man and asked him for a drink of water. He said that he won't share water with terrorists. I said that I wasn't a terrorist and I was just thirsty. Then I was put into prison. I am no terrorist. I didn't even know that I was working with militants. I only realized that through the rumors I started hearing, and then when everyone went on to the front line. I was just cooking food for them. No one even talked to me.
Ethnic persecutions are also reportedly becoming widespread in the area. Arabs and Tuaregs are said to be persecuted on charges of allegedly collaborating with the militants, whom the government and the French troops are fighting against. Our contacts in Timbuktu also told us that shops belonging to Arabs are being looted.
The French, after retaking the final major city of Kidal from the Islamists, say they will soon leave Mali, handing operations over to government troops. Claude Venus, international consultant and former deputy speaker of the Belgian parliament, says this is a bad idea, considering the low discipline and lack of funding in the West African nation.
What I hear now is hardly surprises me. I mean, first of all, the Malian army does hold a grudge against the people who ousted them from the northern part of the country. And secondly, these soldiers are very low paid and have very little armaments, etc. They are not really a regular army in that sense. There's hardly a state apparatus functioning. How can you register people and examine what they do? You can't. You just can't in a country like that. So the only thing you can do correctly is, if you think people might be terrorists, is hold them and arrest them and detain them. What you certainly not do is this kind of extrajudicial executions. But it hardly surprises me that this is going on right now. This country needs support. Yes, this country needs our help. But why is it that this help only comes in the form of military invasions? That's a basic question we should ask ourselves.
last 10 years were killed by handguns?
Would it make you feel any better, little girl, if they was pushed out of windows?
Coming to you from Nebraska by way of Alaska, here's J.J. McCartney.
Hey, thank you, Marcus. Welcome to the Tuesday show. Well, folks, this is it. The last day of June. It's June the 30th. Jim Garrow, our guest today. and we are glad to have you with us. Don't go away. The J.J. McCartney Show starts coming up in just a moment. Again, Dr. Jim Garrow is our guest next on the J.J. McCartney Show. Stick around. All right, welcome to the show, everybody. It's good to have you with us. And weirdest things happen right at showtime. I'm sitting here and I'm literally, moving the dials and getting everything ready to go, and I hear this knocking, pounding on my front door. And so I get up real quickly to look out the window and see if it's anybody. There's nobody there. I don't know. I think it might be the spooks from the CIA or the NSA or the FBI or God knows what agency, maybe Homeland Security. They've come because, well, Dr. Jim Garrow, they would do anything to silence us today, wouldn't they?
They certainly would, but with your luck, it'll be a little girl selling cookies.
Selling cookies.
Yes.
Well, if she's selling cookies, then I'm buying.
The middle of nowhere.
Well, you cannot be too careful these days. You're right. But little girls selling cookies in the middle of the breadbasket of America, I think I'm pretty safe, at least for now. But Lord help this country, Dr. Jim Garrow, because last week's Supreme Court rulings really demonstrate that we are literally, as has been said in many op-eds, we are in an era now of judicial tyranny, and it's been put that Mike Huckabee said something about we are not going to abide by the orders of an imperial court.
Yeah, and he makes a good point. We did not make them imperial. There is a balance with the three powers. The three branches of the government. And within that balance, we have the right as the citizenry, we the people, have the right to overthrow them. In fact, there's an expectation on the part of the Founding Fathers that we would have the collective gumption to do it. And it would be our duty to do just such a thing should there be an imbalance. And, of course, what we've got right now, as you say, it's tyranny from the bench, but it's also tyranny from the Oval Office. And that man was never elected to, in fact, act as imperious as a king. He was meant to reflect what we, the people, ask him to do and what we stand for. And, of course, he's busy with his own agenda and his own worldview, which does not reflect the majority of America by far.
Well, the idea that somehow, we are not, we are no longer a democratic republic. I believe that we're at a point now, a tipping point, where people are beginning to wake up and realize that, hey, it doesn't seem to matter what happens during elections. Look at November of 2014. We take over the Senate. And I remember saying on the day after that election, Jim, I said, we're not going to know what we have until they go back into session. And all of my worst fears about this Congress have been realized. And even now, they still refuse to act on their congressional authority to rein in this out-of-control tyrant in the White House.
No, it's true. And that's an abrogation of clear guidelines, responsibilities that they have, and oaths that they took to execute the offices that they've been given. And of course, you're right. We sit aghast, knowing full well that they are not acting. They're not using the power that they have, and specifically the power of the purse. Nothing can be spent that they have not approved. No monies can be allocated that are not approved by the House. And of course, here we are, the president, holus bolus, full speed ahead, pedal to the metal, addressing his own agenda. But boy, we have a big foot on a big break if the guys in the House would do their jobs.
Oh, absolutely. One of the other things I think that enters into this as well is the fact that this court has, we'll take Obamacare, for example. They have made Obamacare unconstitutional by declaring the penalties were really taxes the whole time. That is unconstitutional because all taxes have to originate in Congress.
That's right, and it's not something that Congress, once it's handed to them, it's not something that then becomes law because they decide then to go along with it. The idea is that through debate, through sessions together, through the work of goodwill within that House, in that performing that function of debate and coming to conclusions and then formulating law, which is then passed, then the rest of the bodies, the executive and the Supreme Court can have a look at it. But
yeah, they're stepping outside of their authority when they essentially rewrite legislation. Basically, we've heard this phrase so many times in our lives: legislating from the bench. It is obviously an overreach. It's overstepping their authority, their constitutional authority. The Supreme Court is not there to write law. They are there to adjudicate cases. They are there to decide whether something is consistent with the law as written and the Constitution as written or not. That's all.
That's right. And keep in mind that the laws themselves issue from the House. It is the House that passes into law, rule, and regulation. It's not something that some bureaucrat might handle as part of his duty, although that's what we're seeing now. Once again, we are now seeing rule by regulation. And so, this new imperious power, which of course is sitting and listening to the beck and call of our dear leader, Obama the First. He's the one who has filling the ranks of the executive's hand-picked maidens in those service agencies that are government, and he is telling them what to do, giving them their marching orders, and they're responding, and they're writing regulation that weaves itself within law, but doesn't have the power of law.
Well, and so what do we do as citizens? What is it that we as Americans can do to rein in and to essentially, I mean, at some point in time, as Thomas Jefferson said, the tree of liberty every once in a while has to be fed with the blood of tyrants and patriots. That's not a direct quote, by the way, but that's the point, is that we at times in America, it will become necessary for us to really draw a line in the sand and say, don't cross this line. And if they've already crossed that line, then it's our job to push them back. And the portion of the Declaration that deals with this, it talks about how, governments are not overthrown for light and transient reasons, but a long string of usurpations. Basically, what this means is that when you see a consistent tendency on the part of an administration or a Supreme Court where they are consistently usurping the Constitution and our constitutional rights, which, by the way, don't come from the Supreme Court. When they usurp our rights and they usurp our Constitution, then it becomes our duty to throw off that government and bring in new guards. That's what the Declaration says. Yeah, it does. And to give fresh meat around the bone that you threw out there, as far as that quote is from Thomas Jefferson is concerned, the tree of liberty must be, not should be, not can be, not might be, it must be refreshed. And you know what refreshment is? Refreshment is revitalization, restoration. That's what it's about from time to time with the blood of patriots and tyrants. And of course, if someone is acting like a tyrant, as in the case of Mr. Obama, then it's up to us, the patriots, to offer our blood in sacrifice in tearing down these tyrants. So it's a responsibility. It's a heavy responsibility. It is not a minor thought.
It's a major thought that Thomas Jefferson put forward. And that whole notion, the Tree of Liberty itself, is refreshed. That is huge. When we're losing liberties, when we're losing freedoms, when we have tyrants acting as if they are King George, and that's the referent here is let's look back at what those guys were dealing with and look at what we're dealing with today. And boy, there are parallels.
Oh, there are lots of parallels. And what I think we're dealing with, too, is simply the fact that people have waited so long for somebody somewhere to do something about this lawless administration. And the longer we wait, the more it seems that, we are just, we're kidding ourselves. We're kidding ourselves if we think that this administration is going to begin abiding by the laws of the land and the Constitution. They don't want anything to do with the Constitution. They are convinced, I believe, that the American people are dumb enough to just continue to go along with whatever and not question what's happened to America and why it is that our freedoms are being squeezed in the way that they are. I think that one of the things that may get people off the schneid is the ruling on gay marriage last week, because this is clearly, I believe, a terrible violation of states' rights. To our own states should always have the right to self-determination when it comes to questions like this.
Mm-hmm. No, you're right. It's exactly that. But it is a usurpation of the rights of the people themselves. We have the right to rise up, and the expectation, again, is that we will rise up when tyranny shows its ugly head. We're to put it in its place. And how do you put it in its place? Well, you rise above it and you crush it. As much as they're trying to crush opposition, namely Obama and his minions, they're trying to freeze us into subservience. And one of the ways to do it is to say out loud that, the expectation will be that the crazies will respond by talking about revolution. And so if anyone dares to bring up the notion of revolution, they've frozen us out of any discussion because they've already declared it to be crazy. And so anyone who enters into that discussion is, by virtue of their declaration, crazy to begin with. So that's part of the Alinsky method. So we've been frozen rather than being enjoined in argument or reason. We are now frozen and put to the side and considered to be crazy ahead of any discussion. Now, you have led up to the whole notion of revolution in your preamble. And you're absolutely right. At what point in time do we, the people, look at the tyranny, the oppression of those that we trusted, entrusted with government and with our freedoms and our liberties, when we see them being hacked away and we see them being gifted to others? And that's the thing that sticks in my craw and many other folks' craws, is the fact that not only is it ripped off from us, but we are seeing it being gifted to a new elite. The homosexual community is part of that new elite.
Yeah, I've got a myriad of topics I want to cover with you today, Dr. Garrow. And when you talk about that, I just want people to think about this. We head into our first break. And by the way, phone lines are open at 855-853-5227 if you have a question or a comment for Dr. Jim Garrow today. But here's the thought I want people to remember. The longer that we hesitate to do something about these unconstitutional rulings of the Supreme Court, the longer we tolerate this, the more danger we are in, because those rulings, consider them to be like concrete being poured around our feet in America. And you don't have much time after somebody has poured concrete around your feet to start moving, because if we allow it to set, we are totally screwed. Now, does that mean we need to go to revolution? Listen, I think there are different ways to accomplish the same thing. I would hate to see America embroiled in a civil war. However, I would love to see America where Americans en masse engage in the kind of civil disobedience that the government simply is powerless to fight. I'll just leave it at that. We've got more to come. Dr. Jim Garrow is our guest. Our toll-free number, 855-853-5227. We'll talk about Jade Helm and much, much more when we come back.
The J.J. McCartney Show.
Apple iPhones are great, but they have an annoying feature. They do what you tell them to. You turn the ringer off, for example. You were at a movie, or you were at church. Worst of all, your best friend makes it to Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, and you are his phone-a-friend. Because you weren't answering your stupid phone, instead of winning $200,000, he walks away with a check for $1,000, and instead of a limo ride to the airport, he winds up in a smelly cab. So what solution have we come up with for you? It's the all-new iPhone Enforcer. Yes, when you've missed more than 10 calls in a row, or 30 text messages, or a call from a game show contestant desperate for knowledge, your iEnforcer will knock on your door or interrupt your board meeting to remind you, gently at first, to turn your ringer back on and get back to your family and friends who are so desperately trying to get a hold of you. If you don't immediately turn the ringer on and make contact with your frustrated friends, your iEnforcer gets a little more persuasive. It could be a slap in the face, perhaps quick fist to your shoulder, or a softly tossed football to the head. If you continue to resist, your iEnforcer will keep on turning up the intensity. The new iEnforcer makes a fantastic gift. The new iEnforcer, available now at your nearby pawn shop.
There's a net
day, and you know what, folks? I think there's a certain point we reach when, Dr. Garrow, there are so many rumors and fears out there on the internet these days. We all know Jade Helm 15 is scheduled to start 2 weeks from tomorrow. Most people still are unsure really what it's going to amount to, but really this is going to be the biggest military exercise on American soil in our history, is it not?
Yes, it is, and different aspects of it are going to be downright scary because it'll happen right in your neighborhood, some chosen neighborhoods already, whereby they will come in, they will round up people just as if there is some sort of a civil war going on. They will surround buildings, they will charge into buildings, they will have the personnel carriers available, ready, and they will be rounding up people and putting them into, you've seen them, these FEMA camps that are out there. They will be setting up this full-scale, no-holds-barred replication, supposedly, of an actual event whereby the citizens, or somehow the citizens themselves, have been infiltrated, not inculcated, infiltrated by groups from wherever, but they're not in that particular environment, but they've moved in, and they've infiltrated the regular folks, and now everyone's being rounded up till they can sort out this. I guess it's a threat toward democracy generally, because the attempt is then that these people are going to come in and usurp the regular authorities, take over the police stations, take over, you name it, take over civil government. So when they move in, it will seem like an attack in your local neighborhood, a total attack by military and police working together. The other side of it is that there may be some blue helmets involved, which is the area where I really freak out when I realize that we're allowing participation of foreign entities into our most personal and private protections, which I don't believe is in the best interests of the American civilian at all.
Now, the other question that this leads to, Dr. Garrow, has to do with the questions people don't know the answers to that I think are burning very warmly these days. Now, some of them are a little bit off the wall, but for example, we had these Walmart stores that closed in these Jade Helm states, and of course, the immediate suspicion was raised when all of these stores, separated by hundreds and thousands of miles from one another, supposedly were shut down all because they had the same plumbing problems. Is there anything to the rumors that these Walmart stores were shut down for a specific purpose, and that purpose possibly to warehouse goods that would be used in the exercise?
Well, now that's pretty interesting, because we can use the name Walmart or Aikenhead hardware stores, or there's any number of vacant buildings around that can house all sorts of military equipment, arms, armament, supplies, you name it, portable kitchens, for troops to come in. And
wasn't this part of the NDAA, though, giving the president the authority to seize private businesses of all types if he deems that it's necessary for the security of the United States?
Yes, yeah, and it is. It is within his purview, within NDAA. You're right. That's exactly right. But what you're seeing across the country is a realization that some of this is happening. The fact that you have private security companies guarding these facilities is an interesting move, too, because if they were being totally honest with us, they would put military personnel in charge of it, because there's weaponry, weapons, arms, and armament inside many of those buildings. And to give that function of securing those sites to private enterprise really makes you wonder, why are they doing it that way? Why are they not doing it for real, as in the military should be protecting their own interests and their own assets?
It kind of stretches the bounds of credulity when you consider the timelines that Walmart put on these store closures in relationship to the Jade Helm exercise. Other things that are catching people's eyes these days, there's obviously the internet is abuzz with lots of different rumors. The most credible of them that I see is the rumor that perhaps an EMP is going to be detonated, especially affecting the state of Texas, but obviously the rest of North America is vulnerable as well. I mean, this might be just a scenario that somebody is running up the flagpole, but it certainly has a lot of people jumpy right now because, for one thing, we're entering the hottest portion of summer in the deep south, and if electricity were interrupted, you can imagine what a mess that would make. And obviously, if anybody's ever read the book 1 Second After, it really does give you a very good idea what America would look like in the aftermath of an electromagnetic pulse. But the thing about it is, I mean, up until this point in time, the United States government has never taken weaponry and used it against its own people. This, or at least the military has not. This is really a grave concern for me that they would do these exercises on American soil. And the question I'm asking you, are these exercises limited to strictly simulated situations, or are they going to be using live ammo, or does anybody know?
Well, that's interesting. You've put out a whole pile of red flag topics in what your lead up there. But let's start with the fact that Mr. Obama did away with posse comitatus. That was the rule of thumb that said that no military could be used on American soil as a policing force against American people. And with the exception that the president could invoke in reaction to disaster, he could then bring in people like the Coast Guard or the Guard generally. But to use troops as a police force was, up until the time they got rid of posse comitatus, until they got rid of that, it was illegal to do. But today, a different story. Now it's a bad thought, but it is possible and legal for them to do. So we're now in a new setting, a setting that the Founding Fathers would have turned over. They'd be spinning over in their graves if they were aware of what was allowed to happen by a president and by a House and by a Senate and by a Supreme Court. Safeguards were in place to make sure that the British style of execution of tyranny would never happen again. And that's exactly what this could lead to.
Well, you know, we as we're looking at the many possibilities for Jade Helm, and you know, I know that a lot of people are, you know, too busy to really spend time worrying about it. But you know, we are looking at a scenario. If you look at the map, the states that are affected by Jade Helm: Southern California, Arizona, New Mexico, Texas, Louisiana, I believe Alabama and Mississippi as well, and Florida. I mean, you're basically painting a swath all across the border states and the states that are most affected by illegal immigration and things like this. And you know, you people could let their imaginations run wild with what the objective really is with this exercise. But the question that it raised in my mind was, if this is really a training exercise designed to simulate massive troop movements into foreign cities,
formerly Terror 547.
Have we not been training our troops to do things like this for generations already?
Yes. Yeah, we have. This is a little bit of overkill. I'm going to suggest you look at an old title for that region that you've just, outlined. We used to call it the Bible Belt.
Mm-hmm.
Remember that?
I do.
Yeah, well, if you look at the old Bible Belt, that's exactly where the lines are. It's the old Bible Belt that this whole exercise is going to take place in. And, of course, we don't know exactly what parts of the exercise will take place in any one city. But we do know the style of emphasis when it comes to some sort of an invasion. They have to go door to door to find out where these people are being housed, who is collaborating with the enemy, who is not. All of this thing of ingress and egress, controlling access to areas. We do that all the time anyway. You're right. This has been well practiced.
Yeah, I heard it referred to as the Department of Redundancy Department.
Okay.
Dr. Jim Garrow is our guest today, by the way, on the show, and it's gonna be interesting to really gauge all this, Dr. Garrow, as we move ahead with obviously, when you're dealing with an exercise of this scope, it seems pretty likely that at least some things will go wrong. Usually when you have an exercise that is this big, things that may not have been anticipated come up. And the question of, are they going to use live rounds in this exercise? I think is a valid question. Certainly, what we're seeing so far suggests to me that the idea here is to intimidate the people in those regions where this is going to be going on. All you need is one foul up when it comes to ammunition. Imagine what could happen.
Oh, yeah. The whole notion of live fire with a civilian population, that just should not be. It should not happen, period.
Oh, I agree.
Yeah, you need to have real constraint and practice and know the steps of the dance, when you're dealing with live fire. And that's why it's used. Sure, it's used in the training of our troops, but they know full well what they're up against. A civilian population wouldn't know that.
Well, that's the thing is, if somebody was trying to invade my property, I'm sure as heck not going to be using dummy rounds.
Right. No, exactly.
I mean, once you have that happen, I mean, there's just so many scenarios. I go back to think about the Branch Davidian compound in Waco, Texas, and how quickly that situation flared up. I believe Ruby Ridge happened much the same way up in Idaho, where all of a sudden you have a situation where citizens believe that their rights are being violated, and they go to defend themselves with live ammunition. And the next thing you know, your exercise has turned into an operation.
Yeah, no kidding. And of course, death is what ensues. Once again, government uses overwhelming force. What happened with Branch Davidian And Janet Reno, bears full responsibility for pushing the button and saying, go ahead, throw in those gas canisters when they knew that there was a possibility of fire. And if it did start, it would be decimating to all life inside. And it's exactly what we witnessed. And I visited that, by the way, 2 weeks after that happened. Same with Oklahoma City. I visited there once they had blown up the Murrah building. I was there within a week. But I'm telling you that we are on dangerous ground when we start to have an interaction between real armed troops, untrained in dealing with civilian populations. And I'm going to say that, by the way, because I don't believe these people have had the training to deal with the American population generally. It's not as if they are a police force with all of the training that goes along with becoming a police officer. These troops are not being trained in how to deal with a civilian population that is a friendly population, nevertheless having elements within it, hidden within it, that need to be ferreted out. This is a different scenario. So I'm a little worried that if it gets into a push comes to shove scenario, military might will answer with overwhelming force, the kind of thing we saw at Ruby Ridge, the kind of thing we saw in Waco, Texas. That's a scary thought.
It is, and it's not nearly as unlikely as some people would have you think. Jim, we got a phone call from South Carolina. I believe it's Charlotte on the line with us. Hello, Charlotte. You're on with Dr. Jim Garrow.
It's always good to hear him. There's several things. I called my sister yesterday and warned about JDL, and she just had a fit on me. You believe all that bull you hear. But things really worry me now. They will not tell the congressman what is going on with JDL. There's been several of them questioning that. All the federal government agencies have been stocking up on ammo. Alex Jones says they're going to be using the Walmart stores to put people in. They say they're going to have plainclothesmen out in public, probably to spy on you. And I know that several admirals and generals say they have been gutting the military, as everybody says they will not fire on American citizens. So it really worries me. And
yeah, well, we remember recall the litmus test. Recall the litmus test, Dr. Garrow, that you spoke about 2.5 years ago when Barack Obama was busily getting rid of senior military officers that would not respond positively to the question, would you fire on American citizens if they did not give up their guns?
Yeah, and we lost in leadership. We lost folks who were dedicated and loyal to we the people, first and foremost. And then this lady's, feelings of fear. I mean, that's legitimate. All of us should be feeling fearful about a scenario that has been described. If in fact they will, they're coming in to shoot live ammunition and are setting up special forces with different tasks that the population are not aware of. How do we know that we're not, walking into traps or walking into things that will cause us and our families either personal or bodily harm?
And Charlotte, when you mentioned, these congressmen and senators are not getting the answers, and I think I understand why. Right. The reason why is because Barack Obama
been down there questioning him. Louis Gomar is from Texas, and he's been questioning. He can't find out anything.
Well, here's what I think is here's what I think is going on, Charlotte. I think that what's going on is this: Barack Obama is looking at Congress, and he's saying to them, without saying it verbally, he's just saying, "Hey, look, I don't have to answer to you. Period. End of discussion." I think that's what's going on.
Well, my brother fought communism in Vietnam, and if he were alive today, he would lead the revolution. And I can't understand why the vets are sitting back and letting this happen, because they had fought communism all over the world, and it is taking over America. If anything, you would think that ruling yesterday about same-sex marriage would be the tipping point.
Yeah, well, I understand that. And there's a story related to that I wanted to share. And Charlotte, thank you for the phone call. Appreciate hearing from you. Dr. Garrow, the Pentagon is being urged right now to boot chaplains who oppose gay marriage. In the aftermath of the Supreme Court decision to redefine marriage in all 50 states, the Pentagon now being urged to cleanse itself of chaplains who refuse to support same-sex marriage. Activist Mikey Weinstein, president of the Military Religious Freedom Foundation, is demanding the U.S. military conduct a purge of chaplains who hold to the traditional teaching of homosexuality and marriage espoused by the first commander-in-chief, George Washington. I think, Dr. Garrow, that this is already happening in America. It's been going on quietly for some time, that they have been basically, trying to kick people out that do not kowtow to the president's politics.
Well, most of us who have been trained to be loyal, to follow orders, to follow the rule of law, and to respect our leaders, our elders, those that God has put over us in terms of leadership, we have a hard time looking these people in the face and realizing that they are outside of the law. What they're doing is outside of law. They may appear to be doing what is lawful by way of statements. They're making all these statements. What they're trying to do is stop us from really examining what is going on. Is it lawful for them to take away our civil rights when there is no war that is going on? The answer is no, it's not legal. They cannot just holus bolus with a pen and a cell phone suddenly declare that this is a new law. In answer to an emergency situation, those kinds of powers are there, but they are very clearly for those emergency situations. This is not about vetting who is loyal and who is not. Although that's what Mr. Obama and his minions, Valerie Jarrett, David Axelrod, that's what they have been doing for a long time. And you brought up the litmus test of the military leadership. And then subsequent to it, the purge of the military leadership. If they would obey the rule of law that they were operating under, and they would not fire on the American civilian population, and by declaring it, they were declaring truth and right. But if it was asked in the context of, will you obey the leadership of the commander-in-chief, as it was put, then, of course, they would lose. And, of course, they were then relieved of command. But, you see, in every case, we will have the same kinds of questions now used with respect to same-sex marriage. And it will be used to determine who will be leaders in education, in government, in religion. Every position within society that demands leadership, these questions will be asked, and it will become the litmus test question for any leadership in any area, funded, and here I've got to be crystal clear, funded in any way or tax exempt in any way, which falls within the purview of the federal government, the IRS, and law.
Now, I want to ask a question of you folks out there listening today, and it has to do with this idea that they're planning on this big exercise, Jade Helm. We know about that. We know that this president has been in pursuit of an agenda for some time that runs far, far off the course, off the reservation of any other administration that we've ever had. So my question to you folks out there, and you can call in with your answers with Dr. Jim Garrow. The question is this: do you believe that Barack Obama is nothing but a minion for some people that are, positing and pushing a very evil agenda, not just on the United States, but the world? Is Barack Obama's agenda in and of itself pure evil? That's my question for you. 855-853-5227 is the phone number. Dr. Jim Garrow is with us. Doctor, how long do we have you for today?
Well, I probably get another 15 minutes.
Okay.
go past the hour yet.
All right, we're going to skip the break, and we're just going to go all the way up to the top of the hour with Dr. Jim Garrow. Now, here's the thing. I think that most people can see through Barack Obama, but the thing that frustrates me is that there is such a large segment of our population that is so programmed to get their information from pop culture and from the mainstream media that, I mean, they are just zombie-like in their nature. If we wind up in a situation where all of a sudden it is a crisis beyond anybody's anticipation, and we wind up in a civil war or some sort of insurgency situation, what happens to these people that just sit around watching TV? What will they do when they are pressed to make a decision? Do you either go with the opposition or do you stick with the administration? I mean, what do you think will happen if it comes down to that, Dr. Garrow?
Well, I think most people are armchair critics. They will sit until they've lost power and they can't sit and watch television anymore. As long as their lifestyle is not in any way impacted negatively, people will just get along to go along. I think that's the norm. And we are very late and very slow to get angry and get militant. But, you know, once people see that they have been conned and they get angry, now that's a whole kettle of fish that we just opened up. That's a whole can of worms that would just be thrown wide open. And I think the American people would rise up in rebellion against something which is, at best, in breach of the spirit of the Republic. But worse than that, it's an absolute denial and dismissal of the will of the people.
Yeah, there's so much vitriol, I think, right now in America amongst the mainstream media towards people with traditional Christian values or Judeo-Christian values, and really we're seeing the ugliness of this, the mainstream media. Personalities on TV and radio and blogs and all over the place. They're just attacking viciously anybody that speaks out in favor of traditional marriage right now. And, you're seeing this pervasive thing on just about every website that was out there, with the exception of the conservative sites, had the rainbows or some other thing to acknowledge this landmark decision by the Supreme Court. The President of the United States tweeting hashtag love wins. This country is screwed if we wind up in a shooting war with Russia, China, or anybody else.
No, you're right. This is not about equality. This is not about equal partners across the landscape, with many different colors of whatever. And I don't mean the flag, the multicolored flag. This is not about that. It's about domination. That is the intent of these groups of people. That is why a baker cannot refuse to bake a cake. They will now go to jail or they'll bake the cake. And whatever happened to the right to close your door and operate your business any way you saw fit, provided you were not violating law? Well, now we have a domination of one group's view, which has been legitimized by the Supreme Court, into being not equal, but better than, more than. It's not about equals again. I'm going to keep saying that. It is no longer about that. It's about what these people will do to dominate. And that is exactly where they're going.
They're clearly in violation of the First Amendment. I mean, we have the right not only to freedom of speech, but as the First Amendment states clearly that Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment or of religion or the free practice thereof. In other words, the government has nothing to say with how you and I practice our faith. And the idea that you can force somebody who is a Christian to do something in their place of business that goes against their Christian values is the most un-American idea I can think of. And, you know, Congress, or the founders didn't fool around when they were putting this together. They didn't do this on accident. The First Amendment is the First Amendment for a reason.
You know, absolutely. And the trouble is that we've gotten switched off and turned down this blind alley about religious persecution. That is not what this is about. It's about big government. It's about why is big government involved in the business of issuing marriage licenses. That is an issue between you and God and your partner and the witnesses that come together in a religious ceremony, not a government ceremony. The government has aspects later. Once that thing is signed, there's all sorts of legalities that come along with it. The IRS approach to a couple is different than that to a singular person. But, you know, it is a religious commitment before God because you take an oath before God. And it's not before government. You don't say, you know, I swear this to have and to hold, you know, until death do us part, oh government. It's to do with a promise before God and before him as a witness.
You know, the thing that really struck me about the Supreme Court, first of all, how in the world do you redefine something, to presume to redefine something that was not founded by man, but was founded by God Almighty? The scriptures support this stance. God created marriage. Look in Genesis chapter 2. And God will talk about how a man shall leave his mother and cling to his wife. And this was established by God as the way for his people to procreate and to live. That's how it was designed by God. The Supreme Court now, trying to force us to redefine the word marriage, is, I believe, first of all, a supremely vain thing for them to try and do. And secondly, has no validity whatsoever to people of faith, because our established marriage ceremony is a religious event. It is not, that never had anything to do with the government, ever.
You're absolutely right. I think Rand Paul hit it on the head the other day when he said, resist any intrusion of government into the religious sphere. Resist it. And that means ending marriage benefits like tax breaks, getting government out of the institution of marriage altogether. Because once government is in there, they'll tax it, they'll regulate it, and now they've redefined it.
Yeah, you know, we also look at the where else this goes, and you know, the authority to give the government the authority to dictate, as you said, how small businesses do their business, and really this amounts to giving the federal government the authority to monitor your business dealings in a way that is very intrusive and it is completely outside the constitutional framework. This, to me, is probably the single issue that needs to be emphasized in the run-up to the 2016 presidential election. Of course, we got the economy and national security, but this issue, when it comes to hot-button issues of who is the government to tell us how to run our business.
Well, let me. I know we're running out of time here, but let me instruct you on something. And this is out of my own experience. And here's what it is. I was in Shenzhen, China. I went to a church that has, on Sunday, in China, they meet so many times because they're limited in the space they have. But they have 5,000 people at each service of 5 services. 25,000 people show up for church in Mandarin, okay? This is in communist China. You know what the government does because of the lack of freedom of religious expression in China? They will go in and they will monitor right at the pulpit. They'll stand there and they'll do sound check of the decibel levels in the building while the hymns are being sung, while the preaching is going on. They'll monitor the carbon dioxide levels in the building while this is going on. If it hits a certain part of the meter, they will shut the place down because it's in violation of a regulation. So the freedom of religion doesn't really exist if government is allowed to come in and apply all sorts of regulations that interfere with that free expression of religion. So what we do when we open up government's access to the religious, we end up living under the domination of the rule of their law or their thought at the time. And remember, government can change. It can go from one extreme one day to the next day with a new crew coming in, and next thing you've got a crew of communists or phony Christians like Obama.
Yeah, well, that's a long list, too. I mean, we look at the presidential candidates in 2016 that have declared so far. Just 3 of them said they would support a constitutional amendment to either define marriage as between a man and a woman or to spell out that the question of marriage should be left to the states to determine. And, I understand it's a complicated issue legally. Because once you have one state that enacts one law and another state doesn't honor it, then it comes down to more lawsuits being heard before the appellate courts and the Supreme Court. But ultimately, what a mess it's going to make. It's going to be a terrible mess. The government, as Rand Paul said, needs to get out of this racket of theirs called marriage. Dr. Jim Garrow, thank you for joining us today. I know your time is limited. We appreciate you spending some of it with us, and let's get together again real soon. Happy 4th.
Hey, thanks, JJ. Happy 4th to everyone.
Take care. All right, stick around, folks. Hour number 2 is coming up next. Nightside Radio Studios.
You cannot go to a 7-Eleven about.
My name's Joe Biden. I'm from Scranton, Pennsylvania.
We either have to assume that our kids are natively brighter than every other child in the world. We should have a minimum of 16 years of education.
Part of what a leader does is demonstrate that he or she knows what they're talking about. And when the stock market crashed, Franklin Roosevelt got on television.
They're just not used to somebody really smart.
Because if he's as smart as Barack is, he mustn't be from my neighborhood.
Nightside Radio Studios, your home for conservative talk radio at its best. Our flagship production, The J.J. McCartney Show, is 2 hours of live conservative talk radio, Monday through Friday, right after Rush.
You're better off than you were 4 years ago.
Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
Coming to you from Nebraska by way of Alaska, here's J.J. McCartney.
All right, want to thank Dr. Jim Garrow for joining us in the first hour. Always good to talk to Jim, and I certainly hope that you got a good bit out of the interview as well. It's just, it seems like the time just flies when we're talking with Jim Garrow, and I know that there's so much more that we need to cover, and we'll hope that time will allow us to cover that which needs to be covered. There's so much that I want to share with you in the second hour. So stick around, ladies and gentlemen. And the phone lines are open. 855-853-5227 is the telephone number. Welcome to hour number 2 of The Big Shoe. Thank you for joining us. As I mentioned with Dr. Garrow, the Pentagon is being urged to boot chaplains who oppose gay marriage. According to these claims being made by Mikey Weinstein, the president of this group called the Military Religious Freedom Foundation. I want all of you to go out there, Google the Military Religious Freedom Foundation, find their website, and just pepper them with spam as much as you can. Just overwhelm them with complaints and with spam of every sort. Do it. I mean, that's what they do to conservative sites. So let's turn the tables, shall we? Nobody is arguing that these losers don't have a right to their religious beliefs, wrote Weinstein in an op-ed, saying at this stage, the only honorable thing that these losers can do is to fold up their uniforms, turn in their papers, and get the hell out of the American military chaplaincy. Oh, yeah, this guy is a real winner, isn't he? I'll tell you something, folks. I'll say this loud and clear for whoever is out there listening today. I am a conservative Christian patriot. And I believe, without any shadow of doubt or reservation of any kind, that homosexuality is an abomination. It's a sin against God. It's a sin against your own flesh. And it is the ultimate perversion of one of the most beautiful gifts that man gave to mankind. Sexuality was given to mankind as a gift by God for the purpose of procreation and for the purpose of a nurturing relationship between a husband and a wife. And it is the reason these people are so vitriolic in their hatred of all things godly, of all things Christian, is because they truly are possessed by a demon that hates God Almighty, that wants to destroy the American family, because that, ladies and gentlemen, is what made America strong and great, was our devotion to the family. Now, I want you to think about something, folks. While in America we're arguing in courtrooms about what is and isn't a marriage, and while we're having all these lawsuits about different things, Obamacare, freedom to do this or freedom to do that, the economy sucks, the American people are so busy sitting on their asses watching cable TV. You know, it becomes a drug after a while. The hypnotic effects of TV on the human psyche. Why would you pay a cable company or a dish company $50 or $100 a month to brainwash you? It makes no sense. But here's what I wanted to get to. You know, first of all, if you